Hi everyone, Darren Hunter here. Before we get into our podcast, just want to do a quick shout out for Inspection Manager. What an amazing inspection app platform that they have. And they're really excited at the moment with their tenant assisted routine inspections, where your tenants, in the convenience of their own time frame and in the convenience of their rental property, they can be getting you through the app inspections, their own inspection or their own photos that they've done. Now, this is going to help you, particularly if you're in lockdown. But what we've also found as businesses have come out of lockdown, they've found that perhaps they can do maybe one or even two of these inspections a year, aside from scheduling their normal routine inspections. The next step, really go and have a demo, have a look for yourself and make a decision where this could actually work for you too. So go to inspectionmanager.com, request a demo and check it out. Hi everyone, Darren Hunter here from the PM Power podcast show, and I have a guest with us today, Kylie Walker, who runs an agency based in Toowoomba and Ipswich in Queensland called I Think Property. But Kylie Walker also is running her own podcast show as well, so check it out. That Property Mum, great podcast show. Just having a look at some of the episodes on there. Kylie, you just did one with Kirk Stafford, the property management staffing crisis. That's a really good topical thing. Resilience with Hayley Mitchell, social media with Alan Bathgate, burnout property management. So everyone go check out that Property Mum. For our American listeners and viewers, mum is spelled M-U-M, of course with British spelling. So welcome, Kylie.
Thank you so much for having me. I've been a long-term listener of all of your podcasts. You guys have pioneers in this space and have some amazing content for everyone in the industry. So yeah, I've been a big fan for a long time.
Well, Kylie, you've told me that so you've got 13 years property management experience, but before that you were a sport journo, and you were a player in women's rugby, and quite the rugby fan. Just saying to you before, we don't know where I'm in Adelaide. I'm from Adelaide, South Australia. We don't know what rugby is here. So congratulations.
Yeah, well, I kind of fell into property management like so many people in this industry. I was working long weekends and late nights, and I had 4 children under 5. Crazy, I know. And it just wasn't working, fitting in with our life. I used up all of my babysitting favors from family and friends. And my husband, he was into real estate. He retired from football and decided to start in real estate. And I kind of was helping out in spare time. And then we eventually started getting asked to manage a lot of properties. Started off, 1, 2, 3, 4, and we kind of just grew organically from there. And I left my TV job, which sounds really glamorous, but yeah, it is. It's a lot of hard work, long hours and weekend work, which, I'd rather be watching my kids play sport on weekends.
Well, no, I was seeing some of your newsletters. I can see your journalistic skills are really shining through. So big well done. And you said, like a lot of people, like myself, I fell into property management when I was very green, very underconfident 18-year-old. But right back in 1989, I first started as a property manager in Adelaide. Now, let's move on. Now, we're going to talk about something, Kylie, which is dear to my heart. And it's something that greatly affects property managers out there, and the area of conflict. Now, I know, and I do teach that 95% of conflict generally happens because someone has the wrong or indifferent expectations. But we can do what we can to try and minimize conflict with education and induction and all of those sort of things to give people the right expectation before something occurs. But I think it's fair to say that you can still tick all the boxes, but we've still got people in properties. We've still got owners that care about their mortgage getting paid, and tenants are living in something that's their home sanctuary. Conflict is just loaded and ready to go in a lot of cases. So it's something that as property managers, Kylie, we've got to get good at this if we're going to be succeeding at property management.
Absolutely. And I think the first thing we need to acknowledge is that we are never going to be able to keep everybody happy. I the end
Yeah,
of the day.
right. Agree. And that, please, everyone out there, if you feel that you need to go and keep everybody happy and do whatever you can to make sure everyone's happy, you're going down. Your mental health is going to suffer. And, you need to know that you've given it your best shot, but even still, people are not going to be, always happy. So I think that's a very good, important burnout minimization belief, that one.
Absolutely. And I can totally speak from experience. I was absolutely terrible with conflict. I was the person that would sweat buckets. My heart would race. I would always react, usually quite aggressively. I had, my response was that fight response. It is. And, with conflict, I think another important thing to remember is that it actually stays in your body until you resolve the issue. And that's not good for our health. Constantly, staying in that elevated, or having your nervous system elevated, constantly being in that stressed state, and having that conflict actually loops around in your mind. So if you're a property manager that wakes up in the middle of the night, 9 times out of 10, it's something either you've forgotten to do during the day, or it's a conflict that you haven't dealt with.
Kylie, what can I say? I can totally relate to what you're saying. I guess, I've been in property management training consultancy a long time, and people listen to my podcasts and they hear a real confident Darren and all that stuff. But truth is, when I first started in 1989, I was very underconfident. I had a very low self-esteem, and fear was something that I struggled with every day. And conflict in property management was my biggest issue that I couldn't deal with. And it went right through to 93. Now, I'm not going to get into how I dealt with it. I dealt with it in an amazing way. Within a 24-hour period, it went from having fear every day to having no fear anymore. But it was an issue. And there's a lot of people listening to this right now, Kylie, who struggle with this. And fear is a real issue. And we've got to be able to know how to deal with it in a real powerful way. And I remember many times, waking up at 3 a.m, in a cold sweat, thinking and worried or anxious about this and anxious about that, or stressing about, I'm going to have to deliver this bad news to this owner on this day or whatever. And I've been right there and completely understand it can really affect your mental health.
It can. And I think you made a good point there as well. It actually starts with yourself, being able to deal with conflict and disputes. It starts with actually understanding who you are as a person, what, limiting self-beliefs might be holding you back, what stories that little inner mean girl might be telling you when you're about to go into a conflict situation. I'm not good at conflict. I can't deal with conflict. I'm afraid of conflict. I always upset people. Really understanding who you are will help long term dealing with conflict. And there's some great tools out there that you can Google, how to, like limiting self-beliefs, I think is a really big one. The inner stories that you tell yourself, facing your fear as well. I mean, what is the fear in a conflict situation? Someone's going to yell at you. That's the worst thing that's going to happen. You know what I mean? So I personally feel that conflicts, being able to effectively address conflict starts with understanding yourself first.
And I think, we've got to say, everyone listening, it's normal to be fearful around conflict. There's very few people out there that can just brush it off and, hey, no worries, and sleep soundly at night after a big issue has happened that day, or worried about, dealing with a conflict situation. Kylie, you got some interesting, discussion around this, around base instincts and stuff like that. You were talking to me before. Let's talk about that first. Let's talk about what happens in our mind when there's a conflict situation there. What actually occurs there? And you said you got some nerdy stuff as well, which I think is probably good to put on the table.
It is. I am a little bit of a nerd and a bit of a researcher. It's probably my journalistic background. But I've done a few presentations for different businesses on conflict and disputes. And I found some really interesting information while I was researching. I like to take a different spin on things. And a lot of I guess, education starts with psychology. and who we are as human beings. So so my research on this conflict and disputes, so it goes way back. So where will I start? I'll start with, it's the primal response to conflict and dispute is housed in a part of our brain. It's one of the most primitive parts of our brain called the amygdala. And it is activated when we go in, and it was critical for survival when we were living in caves, and lions and tigers and bears were lurking around the corner, and we needed that response, that fight, flight, or freeze response, to survive. But as society has evolved, that part of our brain has remained the same. And today, when we are faced with fear or conflict, we respond in the same way. We either fight, flight, or freeze. And if you're listening now, have a think about the last conflict situation that you were in. Maybe it was this morning, getting your kids out of bed. Maybe it was with your husband last night when he didn't fold the washing or didn't cook dinner on time, or whatever that last conflict was. Or maybe it was a tenant that called and doesn't want to fix the stuff in the at their with his bond clean. He won't go back and fix that, or whatever. Have a think about how you respond in those conflict situations, and I can pretty much guarantee that all of us will respond in one of those three ways. Like I said earlier, my response is fight. What's yours, Darren?
I think we used to be freeze, and probably would be fight, depending on the situation. We got all different types of conflict that occurs in property management. And in the last couple of years, even so, Kylie, things have seemed to have got worse. People through COVID, people have become more critical. Tenants have become more critical. Owners have become more critical, more wanting to fight us. It's really been an erosion and undermining factor of the industry, where so many people are just leaving because things have just got so difficult to handle. All of those sort of things. I think the conflict, has been a big part of our last 2 years with COVID.
It's probably why a lot of people are leaving the industry as well. I mean, we don't get paid enough to go to work and deal with some of those levels of conflict. And obviously COVID put a different spin on the conflict situation. And also I think in Victoria and Queensland, we've had a lot of legislation changes as well. And people not understanding those legislation changes and what was going on with COVID, the moratorium on evictions, for example, that created a lot of angst, a lot of conflict because tenants thought they couldn't get kicked out of properties, and a lot of fear for landlords as well. So there was a lot of tricky situations, tricky waters to navigate for property managers around conflict over the last couple of years. I really feel for some of them.
And there's many, many different types of conflict, and you can do your very, very best in property management. But if you do unfortunately have an eviction situation and the tenant hasn't paid their rent and you have to see them off out of the property, well, you could be having conflict out of that, which is, you've done your very best in that situation. But Kylie, let's just lead on to talking about diffusing conflict. And I think, how many counters have we been to, just in our out and about, you go to a counter in a bank, or you go to a counter in some sort of government office, or you go to a line where you got to stand at a newsagent's, or, you're seeing more and more these signs pop up, put there by the employer or the company saying, we don't tolerate abuse. If you, we'll be asking you to leave, like a post office, it's another classic one. You see these signs everywhere, everyone knows what I'm talking about. Conflict and people blowing up and getting upset is now becoming so common, and unfortunately and regretfully so acceptable to a lot of people, though we know it's unacceptable. This issue that recently happened with Will Smith and Chris Rock, that's conflict. And that was unfortunately, an unhealthy way that Will Smith responded to conflict using violence. But there's so many people now that feel it's normal and okay to abuse someone if they're upset about something, even minor. And so there is more chance of conflict happening now than ever before over smaller matters that people wouldn't have got upset over many years ago. And so I think, Kylie, that being a good precursor to a discussion between us around, we've got a situation, someone's on the phone or in the office or at a property inspection, they're upset, they're emotional, they're angry, possibly starting to get abusive. We've got to calm this situation down. Kylie, what are some things that we can be doing here to take control of this situation?
That is like an everyday situation for a property manager at the end of the day, isn't it? And I think the first thing you need to do is to listen. You need to, there's a great saying, you've got 2 ears and 1 mouth, so double down on the listening. So yeah, start, really listen. And sometimes people just want to vent. They just want to be heard. They just want to get their feelings, I guess is the right word, their feelings out there. So I think the first thing is to just listen, be quiet. As much as you want to jump in and defend yourself, really be disciplined and hear them out first.
I think what you just said there is very profound. Everyone, you need to understand, when people are upset and angry, they want to be heard. The word heard in our context of what we're talking about is 2 ingredients: empathy and listening. You can listen, doesn't mean that you care about what they're saying or have empathy or wanting to listen to what they're saying. So it's listening with empathy is them being heard. If they perceive that you are actively listening and care about what they're upset about, that in itself will dramatically bring that emotional temperature down very quickly, and probably will deal with 80 to 90% of the emotion that's going on, because you can't discuss squat at the moment when the emotions are flying and people are angry. You want to get down to a level-headed discussion. To do that, you've got to remove the emotion. And as you said, Kylie, being heard is very much part of bringing that down.
And with regards to the empathy, one of the best ways to demonstrate empathy, even if you're not genuine about it, and even if they are unreasonable, is just to repeat back what they said. So if they are unhappy because you were late paying their rent to them and their home loan got defaulted, just repeating that. Okay, so you're upset because your home. Of course, I understand that would be annoying. You've obviously got a late fee there. That's one of the best ways to demonstrate empathy. When somebody is really upset and angry, if you can't think of anything else to say, and just repeating back what they've said is a really a good thing to say back to them.
Because again, active listening means you're listening exactly to what they're saying, which is what they want. And they can see that you're on the same page as them because you are actively listening. And the proof of that is that you are repeating back what their issue is, demonstrating your active listening, again, bringing that temperature down.
That's exactly right. I'm just trying to think of some other things to do.
We said we got offering solutions as well. Yes. And I think once we've actively listened, then we can start saying, look, based on what you've said, I can see you're upset, but this is what I'm going to offer as a solution, or I think that we can do. And then offering that solution and saying, hey, if I do this by Friday or whatever, I mean, it really depends on what the situation is. Sometimes we can't give a solution to, say, a tenant that's being evicted, and they're really angry and upset. You've got to do your best. But in this case here, we're trying to fix something, and we're giving that, saying this is a solution I'm going to do, and then giving them an idea and getting them to agree. Are you going to be okay with that? Is that going to be the solution to this situation?
And sometimes you don't have that solution straight away. So sometimes you might need to say, look, I need to just have some space, some time. I need to think about this. I'll come back to you, like you said, on Friday, or I might need to seek my boss's opinion. This is a bit above my head. but taking that time out is really important, rather than thinking on the spot and making the wrong decision. So have that discipline to know when to take that time out. And also, it's a negotiation as well. A lot of conflict is about a negotiation. It's about a give and take. I'll give you this, but the tenant might do this in return. Trying to find, it sounds cliche, but trying to find that win-win is very valuable. And sometimes you won't think about that on the spot. And it is important to take the space, take the time, and really think through. And another thing I think is really important is to actually understand what the dispute is, or what the conflict is. Because sometimes you get so emotional, and a lot of conflict is about energy exchanges as well. So when someone's really angry and yelling at you, you take that energy on, and then you respond with the same energy back to them, like Newton's law. For every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. Again, there I go, getting nerdy. But that's the same with an energy exchange. A conflict in its simplest form is an energy exchange between two people. So if you don't take that time and space, you are going to keep responding the same exactly back to them. So I think that's another really a valuable point to mention for anyone really struggling with that conflict.
Of course, and I think that part of the discussion, everyone, just remember, you got to care. Make sure you show that you care, and you're actively listening, and that's going to dramatically bring down a hot situation. Kylie, for many years, I've seen so many property managers just pouring fuel onto fire, not water onto fire, and I've seen tragic situations where businesses, property management bosses, I've seen. I remember in 1990 watching a 60-minute segment on the Agent from Hell, a guy in Sydney that was very quick to stoke conflict and be quick to get involved with high levels of conflict, and I do know the gentleman. I knew him personally back 5-10 years ago. The conflict can have tragic circumstances. And in this particular case, a tenant went into an office and knifed a property manager. Such an awful illustration of where bad conflict management can go. And full respect to the principal who, really, after that, he said, Darren, you don't get involved with conflict. You walk away from it, you deal with it, you put it out. Different from the guy in 1990 I saw in 60 Minutes that was known as the Agent from Hell. And it took, unfortunately, that person's death to change the way that he dealt with conflict after that. Extreme example, I get that, but we've got to be very quick and now skillful people to be able to deal with conflict. Now, Kylie, we've got property managers that are dealing with emails, and the temperature's rising. The emotion is starting to arise in an email. What's the best thing? What can we do? What can we do in here, in this case there, where we can see that emotion starting to pick up in an email?
Pick up the phone. Don't have debates with email. There is no context is never appropriate or true. People can read words anyway and interpret it any way they want. Whereas when you pick up the phone and you're having a conversation with somebody, there is no miscommunication. Same with texting. I mean, I'm sure we've all been in a texting argument with somebody in our lives, and people misinterpret what you say, and it only escalates situations. So my best advice there, it also resolves things so much quicker when you pick up the phone and you talk to somebody. We are all, and I will admit, I am guilty of being a keyboard warrior. And like I said before, I was comfortable with conflict. I would avoid conflict at any cost because I couldn't control my own emotions. And I would sit and write these big, long-winded emails rather than just picking up the phone and resolving it in less than 5 minutes.
Yeah, 5 minutes on the phone saves 1,000 words in an email, doesn't it? And a famous quote by Julie Collins, who's an expert in property management and from Lake Macquarie in New South Wales, running an agency there. Her famous quote is, "The phone is for conversation, and the email is for confirmation." And you talked about texting and getting into conflict, and my goodness me, think about a Facebook chat. We're seeing these text wars going on in comments on a Facebook post, where people just fight and angry, and it just texting is such a poor way to communicate. And we've got to use the most effective way and best platform to fix conflict. Texting is the worst way to communicate. The next level up, less worst, is email. Then there's phone. Then there's face-to-face Zoom. And then there's actual face-to-face is the best way to communicate, to quickly resolve things, because we can communicate fully with our body language, and people can see our feet shuffling and all different types of things when we're face to face. But then every level of communication that comes in after that strips out something out of it, right down to the most primitive form of communication, which is texting. So you just got to recognize each one of those platforms have a purpose, but make sure you're using the right purpose for the right level of communication.
Can I just jump in there and say also, with conflict, people take it personally, but it's not. You shouldn't be taking it personally. Property managers shouldn't take their conflict around their jobs personally, unless you've really stuffed up. And then at the end of the day, everybody stuffs up. We all make mistakes. Your landlords, your tenants, everybody makes a mistake. You own that mistake. You apologize for that mistake, and then you offer a solution to that mistake. But it's not personal. When a landlord's blowing up about I'll use that example again, their rent not being paid on time and they've missed their mortgage repayments. The landlord is not yes, he's taking it out on you, but the reason he's upset is because he's probably going to get a late fee, and he probably needed that money, and he's upset about the money. He's upset about his situation. He's not upset about you. So switch off that taking it personally, put up that boundary or barrier or whatever you want to put up there, and then listen, show your empathy, and offer that solution. I'm really sorry. This is what I'm going to do to fix this. Make sure that it doesn't happen again down the track. I'm going to put this in place, or explain it if the tenants didn't pay their rent on time before our disbursement, which is a classic. Before we disperse, the tenant paid it the day after. I maybe recommend that you, put a little buffer in there in case it happens again. He's paid 2 date falls in the wrong cycle or whatever. Find that solution and do the work, and he'll never be upset with you ever again.
Yeah, absolutely.
If you do the right thing.
Well, let's talk about taking things personally, because most property managers do take the job personally, do take conflict personally. What are some of the things that people can do that they've had a difficult day? How can they just wash off their day, switch off 5 or 6 o'clock at night, be able to have peace of mind at nighttime, not waking up at 3 a.m, that witching hour that property managers are very well known for, waking up and stressing out? What are some tips, that people can use, Kylie, to not take the job personally?
This is such a great question, because I have actually just recently started a new practice or habit, if you like, and it is called a work shutdown routine. And every afternoon I check my emails. I finish work at 5 o'clock. That's my done time. There's no negotiation around that. I'm going in to see my family and spend time with them. That's my time. But I will check my emails, make sure nothing urgent has come in. I will plan out tick off my list of things that I achieved today. Might give myself a little high five to celebrate something that I'd been putting off, and I achieved it. Give myself a little win there. And then I will write down my to-do list for tomorrow, prioritizing it, my top 3 things that I need to do tomorrow. And then I've got everything else in order, numbered, or however you like to structure it. Then I shut down my computer, close off close my to-do list, put that away, take some deep breaths, whatever, and turn off the lights, walk out, and that's it. I'm done. But that routine gets me in that unwind phase. I'm organized for tomorrow. I know what I've got to come in and sit down at my desk and do first thing in the morning. And I really think that it's really helped me anyway. Sort of come in the next day and spend the first 15 minutes when people are, talking to you or, at you, at least you can focus really quickly. And just on that focus, do you know, I've just read this really interesting stat, and I know it's off topic a little bit, but I think it's all relevant, that the average person these days only focuses for 8 seconds. Isn't that crazy?
Yes, that is crazy.
Absolutely, yeah. So, but anyway, that's what has really helped me. I think switch off for the day. Yeah,
I think there's another podcast in that there, Kylie.
There is, yeah, absolutely. I know it just
shutdown routine.
Yes.
And I will take you up on that. But I think other, people out there, what thing have you got that separates you between your work mind and your home mind? Because your family needs the best out of you. Your children need the best out of you. Your life partner needs the best out of you. And property management has a way of stealing that from the family. And, you're still in work mode. I remember myself, my wife, Kylie, I've got my wife is called Kylie, and she's, about this problem and that problem, but I'm all problem solved out. I've got nothing left to give. All that was given in work time, my problem solving, because property management is one big problem to be solved. And, we've got to have that wind down time. And so we and particularly a lot of property managers, over 90% are ladies. And, a lot of them have got households to run and kids to run, and they put that mum hat on, that property mum that you talk about. They put that mum hat on, and things get very, very busy. And so we got to have that buffer. So other property managers, I know, they would have a little ritual or routine. One particular property manager I know in the Adelaide Hills, there's a big tunnel. When he drives through that tunnel, comes out the other side, it is home. When he drives through the tunnel in the morning and he goes onto the Adelaide side, well, now I'm in work mode. Other people, it's a beach walk, or it's going to the gym or something like that. You've got to have some sort of buffer or ritual where you can just wash off the day and get into work mode. And of course, then we've got to get disciplined about our emails and our calls and all that sort of thing. And that's another training session. We do have podcasts on that as well. Just go to episode 1 and 2, everyone. We've got probably one of the best property managers in New Zealand named Shadi. She doesn't take any emails or any calls after hours. The phone's left in her car. Go and have a look at that, Shadi Salapur, and you'll get that. So I think Kylie had a really good podcast there. And just as a reminder, everyone, we've got some really good conflict training sessions in our IGT exclusive members portal. I've done a training session on how to proactively avoid conflict from actually happening. And that really comes down to understanding that most conflict occurs because something happened outside of someone's expectation. They had a wrong or indifferent expectation. The usual, why wasn't I told about that? Well, we've got to get really good at educating and inducting before something occurs. That's why we induct the tenant thoroughly at the start of the tenancy. And we've got all those potholes and speed humps along the way that we got to induct them before something occurs, particularly before a tenant moves out of a property as well. So we've got a session on proactively avoiding conflict, and then when you're in conflict, how to deal with it. So that's reactively dealing with conflict as well. So if you want more information on the membership, just go to the IGT Inspired Growth Training.com website. Just go become a member and you can see the information on that. But Kylie, good session. And again, a reminder, go and subscribe and listen to Kylie Walker's podcast, That Property Mum, MUM. Some really good topics, very similar to the sort of things that we wrestle with in the PM Power podcast, the big issues that property managers struggle with. That's our focus as well. Kylie, you're a breath of fresh air. Thank you. I really enjoy the time, and it's been a great chat, and I look forward to having you on our show again, hopefully in the very near future.
Anytime. Thanks for having me.
Take care, everyone. Thank you.